So to show up as our best selves, as the leader that we can be, must we engage in this process of healing? How many of my decisions were based on a self-concept that was not accurate, or based on what I thought it meant to be a CEO or have a business?
Right.
And only through engaging in consistent growth and healing can I move toward a different even set of decisions.
Having more of a trauma-informed approach of just educating ourselves around how does trauma potentially show up in a working environment. And so that we can look at like, okay, how do we heal as a team, move forward as a team, work better together? I mean, that team dynamic, interactive element is so important. It's the individual work, right? I have to do the work on my own. But if all of us on a team are doing some work, then as a team, we're all going to rise.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Breakdown, where Karen Finney and I are breaking down our inner work episode with Carol Klocek, and we're going to start with dancing.
Always got to dance. Start with a dance break.
You're just listening to me, but I promise it's really good. It's like awesome. Yes. And what's really cool about having this conversation today, Karen, as I was just telling you, is I just came from the Luncheon. So Center for Transforming Lives. Carol is the CEO of that organization, and they just had their annual fundraising luncheon where we got to hear transformative stories of women who'd gone through their programs and healed trauma.
Love it.
And Carol spoke, and it was fantastic. So very much.
I love that. I feel like I'm fangirling as you're saying, I was just there and Carol spoke.
Here with Carol. Yes. And Plug for Cook Children was a guest. Yeah. And they're sponsors of that organization. So, I mean, all of our circles are intertwining, but I'm thinking back to the conversation that Carol and I had was really related to what she was speaking about at the luncheon. And she referenced something that she shared on Inner Work podcast, that she is a product of childhood trauma, of significance, and how that has impacted her leadership journey and her journey in life. And would love to hear some of because you're kind of fly on the wall listening to that last episode. What really jumped out at you as you were reflecting on that?
Yeah. I mean, so much, obviously. One of the things that really stood out, I mean, I love a good storytelling aspect of anything, but one of the stories she shared was about this well-intentioned and well-meaning person who early in her career told her, don't talk about your family. Don't tell anybody else about this. And what that did for her.
Yeah.
And to her. And just kind of this idea of, if we put it in the context, because I think she said it was the 90s, something like that. We put it in the context
in terms of emotional intelligence.
Like we weren't around then, but I mean, it was a different.
Oh, I was not emotional
time, as I say, but a lot has changed and a lot has evolved, and just I can, like my empathy hat, right? I'm going in and I'm experiencing everybody in that story and thinking, wow, I think this person, and she said this person probably was very well intentioned and well meaning, and it could be within the context of those times that advice was quote unquote good, in the sense of maybe it could have hindered her, or because of what the workplace looked like. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the way that she internalized it and the way it turned into shame and, this inability to speak about her family and her situation for a really long time, that we saw then the workplace evolve from that point forward. And for all of us to kind of collectively get more comfortable speaking about these things and having more vulnerability and more support. But because of how that played out for her, she wasn't able to evolve with it, right? So like the workplace revolved and she remained stuck in this moment of shame of, I can't talk about these things.
Right.
And kind of a little bit about her healing journey, which I thought was very impactful.
Huge. And as you're talking, I got an image, and I can't think of what you call it, when light shines through a faceted piece of glass. What is it called? It's like fractals or something like that, but like it creates a rainbow and shapes go everywhere.
Like a crystal, and it's like beautiful.
And I'm imagining how that one word from the well-meaning person, probably based on their experience of, because the message is, don't be vulnerable, don't listen or talk autobiographically. People don't want to hear your story. What what we take from those, especially
Right.
when we're younger, is magnified in every area of our lives. So what might have been, to your point, isolated to, hey, that group of people, they're not going to hear the impact of your story, or, this isn't the right setting. They might have meant it to be isolated and helpful, but it became a much bigger story that kept the trauma down.
Yeah. The interpretation.
Yeah.
The interpretation of it. And then what does this say about you? What does this mean about you? People shouldn't know this about you. It'll change how they view whatever it was. Right.
Yeah.
And just how that spiraled. And I just think of that kind of growing and feeding. And what do they say? You're only as sick as your secrets. So if something becomes a product of shame and secrecy, and it lives within us, then it grows, versus when we are owning our narrative and owning our story.
Yep.
And in her case, which she talked about, using that story to help others, right? Because everything that she has experienced has been part of her story and bringing her to this moment in time and this wonderful work that she does.
That's right.
And part of that is being able to share her message, her story, where she has overcome, and that this healing that she did for herself has allowed her to share in a different way and help and connect with people in a new way.
That's right. I mean,
chills.
The revealing of it, and look what it has created for so many people, for thousands of people. But huge. Yeah. And the power of our own story. And this reminds me too of, where they say in coaching circles, you're uniquely equipped to coach someone who's been through what you're going through. It's like this, I'm coaching myself. And how true is that? The way that we're wounded, it's almost like that was part of our training.
Yeah.
To get to this point.
Your mess becomes your message, right? Like whatever it is.
You're so quippy today. I love it.
I'm a quippy every day, let's be honest. But, I mean, it becomes that thing. And rather than treating it like the shadow or the darkness or the thing that we don't want to speak about or acknowledge, it's more around like the journey.
Yes.
Right. and it's that journey and that story that touches people, right? Because everybody, if we only share the end results and we only see people now and in this moment, and especially, I think she talked about this a bit with the trauma and the healing trauma, that we're not fully able to fully show up if we haven't healed things, then people don't get us in the same way, right? They just see maybe the image versus the person.
Yeah. Yeah. And this idea that, because this is something we were discussing, is healing. So is moving through life and healing our wounds and processing that a leadership requirement. So to show up as our best selves, as the leader that we can be, must we engage in this process of healing? And in thinking about that, because I look back on the last 10 years of decision-making, 8 years of decision-making on behalf of collective growth and trying to move this baby forward, how many of my decisions were based on a self-concept that was not accurate, or based on what I thought it meant to be a CEO or have a business.
Right.
And only through engaging in consistent growth and healing can I move toward a different even set of decisions.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you ask that, like, is it a requirement for leadership? And, I kind of take it a step further and go, is it a requirement for life? I'm like, I don't know if it's required, but man, are you missing out if you're not taking the opportunity to do it?
Yeah.
Because I know all of our healing is a journey, right? And so it's for many of us, it's long and broad and all of that. And I can look back over 15 years and go and see a very clear and defined point and say, okay, if I'm still the same person at my core, right? Like I haven't become a whole new person with a whole new personality, and there are things that I have really worked on and healed and faced and all that. And if I look 15 years ago and say, if I was still operating by the same playbook of kind of reacting and not really understanding where those reactions came from, and not doing some work to think about, how do I respond? Where is this coming from? All of that, my life would be very different. And, I look at that and go, would that be as rich? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I would have ulcers. I don't know.
I know.
Do we say that you got to keep the score? Like the body would be keeping the score.
It's right.
So is it a requirement? Gosh, I feel like it should be. And I look at it and go, and why would we not want to? I know that the work is hard. Right. And she references that.
Or you're not aware that it's even possible.
Also that. Yeah.
That's that whole object subject thing. Like you don't like understanding the conceptual idea of imposter syndrome. Let's say can that idea impacts so much of your life and so many of your decisions, but you don't know it until something creates awareness for you and you have to be in the place to resource yourself.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And so that
like hopefully those things are happening in tandem, right? The awareness, I think she referenced the Matrix, right? I've taken the pill. I'm looking around. I really hope I can be resourced in that moment because if I'm just getting the one, then it's like,
right.
Well,
that is when people go in, people have mental breakdowns. People they're at the absolute end because the resources are not there when they can no longer cope. And how do we support people not getting to that ledge and having those but the crises get our attention in a way that normal life doesn't. That's where, challenge. Do I have to only learn through challenges? Most of us do. We're not learning as much when things are going well. I mean,
for sure. You got to bottom out here and there. Like not every bottom is a rock bottom, but you got to hit some speed bumps. You got to skin your knees. Otherwise, we just think everything's working. Maybe we don't have the reason to pause and say, let me do this differently. So I think as these conversations happen more and more, and as people are more presented with these concepts in ways that they hadn't been in the past, then maybe there is more proactive, kind of decision to say like, oh, let me understand what this means for me versus something bad is happening.
Right.
And maybe that's what drive me to it. And even as leaders, it might just be as simple as nothing bad is happening, but the good that I want to happen isn't happening for me either.
Right.
So if I'm seeing other people around me get the things that I desire, if I feel like that I should be at a certain point in my journey and I'm not there yet and I'm not sure why, it might not be that I'm getting negative feedback. It might not be that I'm getting constructive feedback because sometimes we don't want to upset the apple cart of somebody who's a good performer and all of that, but because we want them to keep doing what they're doing, but maybe they have bigger aspirations. So, it might just be that people are asking more questions around like, I wonder what this means and starting to do the work that way.
Yeah.
Versus hitting bottom.
Well, and, Carol, she's talking about people's lives and helping people heal in the context of a nonprofit. So serving people, it is her workplace, but she's serving people outside of the workplace. What relationship? I mean, this is something we talk about a lot. What do we do about trauma in the workplace? Where's the work relevance there?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is just if we talk about baggage sometimes, right? And I think an understanding acknowledgement that in this current moment in time, there's probably quite a few people carrying around some sort of trauma. And it's a continuum, right? There are gradations. Smaller trauma, lower T trauma, capital T trauma, right?
Yeah.
But understanding that everybody's got something. And so when we go into this workplace and then we're interacting as humans and we're interacting in a professional capacity, right? And we're all doing our best, still understanding that a person that you might be really struggling with, or it's like, why do they do that? Why do they show up that way? Having the empathy to be able to go, I don't know this person's full story. I don't know why they are reacting in that way in this moment, but maybe there's more there than I know. And just being able to take a step back versus kind of piling on the judgment of like, what was that?
Right.
But I think also having more of a trauma-informed approach of just educating ourselves around how does trauma potentially show up in a working environment.
Yeah.
And so that we can look at like, okay, how do we heal as a team, move forward as a team, work better together? I mean, that team dynamic interactive element is so important. It's the individual work, right? I have to do the work on my own, but if all of us on a team are doing some work, then as a team, we're all going to rise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so where does trauma show up? Follow the trigger, follow the things that are not working for this person. So somebody overreacting to feedback, they got triggered by that. missing deadlines. So there may be a bend toward procrastination. That can be a trauma response, which is linked to perfectionism. Overworking can absolutely be a trauma response.
What?
It's like, right.
Huh?
Really? Yeah.
People do that?
No, never. Not anybody on this call, especially. But we think of it as just a habit. And I think it's healthy to think of it from a lot of different angles, but there's also a sense of kind of letting ourselves off the hook around blame to say this at one time was a healthy response for me because there was some type of traumatic event or an understanding or a self-limiting belief or something that caused this triggering that created this habitual response that by noticing, which we talk about a lot, I can decide whether I want to keep doing that.
Right. And is it still serving me? One of the things, I can't remember if you said it or Carol said it, but it was kind of talking about, I think it was you, as children, that we behave like the people around us, like that's for our safety, right?
Yes.
And so then these things become embedded in our body, these patterns, and just all the talk of the nervous system and the cellular level, I was like eating all that up, right? Because that's what we talk about. And it's so true. That even as we age and we can look at a situation and go, I know in my mind that this is not an unsafe situation. Our body, our cells, our nervous systems, they're having that same reaction that maybe we did as children. Yeah. And just how huge that is, how impactful that is to have that understanding of it doesn't matter. This is safe. And I know logically that this is safe. Yeah. Why, this is maybe why my heart is racing or I'm getting like flushed or my palms are sweating or whatever is because this feels like something from them that I know would be negative for me in some way.
Yeah. And for those of us that we do something and we say, why can't I stop doing this? Or why, what is it? And it might even be approaching conflict. It's because as a child, this has been such an unlocker for me as I've studied a little bit about this. As a child, it was life or death. If we did not have the comfort and protection and support of adults, forget about it. And whether we think looking back on that now that was reality or not, it is in some parts of society. It truly is. And most of us were blessed to not be in that society. But B, that's what it feels like to a kiddo. That's what it feels like to an animal, to something that is completely dependent on an adult brain and an adult body. And so, of course, it's like, give yourself a break that feels impossible because your body trained you very well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Can we just be gentle with ourselves? You've been training your whole life to do this. So this idea of like, let me just instantly, now that I have awareness, do it differently. Like, oh, okay. You're unlearning years and decades, right? Yes. Of habitual response. Yeah. So I definitely, being gentle with ourselves and being kind through that process is so important because more kind of piling on and getting annoyed with ourselves and picking on ourselves, that's not going to create the change. And it's potentially replicating some of the trauma or the other negative voices we might have experienced in the past. And
so true.
We're trying to unlock that and do something different.
Yeah. For times that we're operating in a workplace where we can tell people are responding to stories, past fears, unresolved trauma. We see it all the time. I'm thinking about the ways that we bring that up for them, not as trauma, but as, I think we tend to talk about it as productive habits, as, high functioning teams, as like pro-social, pro-team behavior. Do you think that is enough for us to be approaching it that way? We bring in, vagus nerve, we bring in the biological response. We don't talk about it as trauma.
That's a really good question. And I think I'm kind of going back to what I had said before around it being a bit of a continuum in terms of where people are falling on that trauma scale. And I think most of us with some awareness can be equipped to work with somebody who has unhealed lowercase t trauma. But when you start getting into the capital T, I don't know that is the average person really equipped from a language perspective and an understanding perspective to really fully know and appreciate where that other person maybe is coming from and how best to kind of work together and heal and move forward as a team. So I wonder if it's an even more of a awareness and really thinking about this from a trauma-informed perspective, which takes it further than just a general empathy, we're all working on things perspective, right? Which I think is probably the more common approach of just trying to be more self-aware and understand people as people and all of that. So I feel like there's at least in my mind, an opportunity for all of us to educate ourselves on the further end of the spectrum around what might that look like, how might that show up, and where maybe do we need to interact with people differently.
It's easier to think about talking about trauma and approaching trauma-informed care. Like we hear about that all the time in like a school setting or a nonprofit setting. But it's like our expectation is you're an adult now. You should have this all handled. And is that speaking to that invulnerability that was exactly the top of the conversation, right? Yeah. Don't expose yourself.
Don't expose yourself. And I mean, I feel like there are so many themes that we come back to, right? But just the theme of psychological safety, and that a lot has to do with, is that psychological safety being created in a particular environment that allows for that vulnerability, that allows for that discussion? You have to feel safe to be able to maybe have those conversations and to be vulnerable, right? Vulnerability and psychological safety, they sit side by side.
Yeah. One of the things Carol brought up I thought was interesting was the conversation on self-criticism. So having that strong self-critic that we identify as having driven us. And then when does it stop helping? Do you think it ever helps?
Do I think the self-critic ever helps?
Yeah.
I mean, everything, you're getting the Libra in me now. Like everything is good and bad. I don't know. I'm going to do the scales. I think, and you've spoken about this, right? Is the self-critic driving me? And are there aspects that I can look at and say, okay, thank you, self-critic, because you got me here. And I appreciate you. But it's that overuse, right? It's like anything. We can have overused strengths. We can have overused shadow sides. So it's just, I think it's all part of our story. And it's hard to go, well, this one's a good one and this one's a bad one. I think it relates more to how are we feeling about it, and can we look at it and accept it for what it is and say, okay, this is part of my story, and thank you and all that, and also be able to say, okay, you're overdoing it now, right? Like, hey, you were here to protect me, you've been here to make me great. I appreciate all that you've done for me. Also, I need you to take a back seat, and maybe self-care needs to have a little bit more limelight now. Maybe boundary setting me needs to have a little bit more time in the spotlight, whatever it looks like, right? So I hate to just be like, oh, it's never good. I don't know. Everything that if I say something in my life wasn't good, if I take out that element, then how does that rewrite the entire story, right?
Yeah.
So it's more of that concept of, is it overused now?
Yes.
And is it stopping me from my own growth and healing?
Yeah. And I'm imagining it too, like intensity and also scope. So is the self-critic so loud and so intense versus is it that and also keeps you from ever being happy? Like if there's a win, it should have been better. Like how present is it and how intense is it? And that probably varies based on different people, but it can steal your joy.
Yeah. And it's like you've got maybe you've got your self-critic, and everybody's voice is different. They say that it's the voice of whatever you heard when you were young, right? So I'm sure all of ours has a little bit of a different voice. And is that voice still driving? Because is it driving in a decision? I think, your self-critic drives you to kick butt. But a self-critic could also stop you from doing things. Your self-critic can tell you no. Your self-critic, you don't try that, you're not good enough, right? And then where is my companion, like self-advocate and my self-cheerleader or whatever? The one
can
that's
we introduce them to each other? Can they become friends?
You know what I mean? Can they be frenzies? Because mean, I don't know. I don't want to walk around thinking everything I ever do is great all the time and I'm perfect and blah, 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 blah. Like I still want that push to be better and do more, but I also want that love and acceptance and that gentleness and that kindness to be part of that story. I don't want just one voice picking on me personally.
That's right. That's right. Well, and what does the self-care look like? The being your own cheerleader, being your own champion while still keeping the bar raised high. We talk about that with teams. How do we do that when we're coaching and counseling our teams? And it's high accountability, but it's also high care. And how do we follow that same pattern for ourselves?
Yeah, for sure. And I like self-care is so funny to talk about because you think self-care and it's like I've got cucumbers on my eyes or something.
I'm getting a pedicure.
Maybe it looks like that sometimes. I was British. But I think it's if I think about more of the routine self-care kind of habits, they're not always popular, right? Like I think about the things for me and knowing myself and knowing I can work this many hours and be really hard to work with and probably start to make mistakes and things start slipping because I need sleep for my brain to function. Or I can have a recognition of I am at my best. Have we said corporate athlete lately? I know we love to say corporate athlete every now and then, but I'm my best corporate athlete in a more compressed amount of time just because there's only so many hours in the day, week, whatever. That allows me to sleep, to go to the gym, to eat well, to spend time with my family, spend time with my friends, read books, whatever it is, but do the things that allow me to show up as my strongest, most powerful, creative, butt-kicking force, right? Yes. And so that's something that I have learned to be protective about. And part of my healing journey is to do more of that. That's not always the popular answer, right? Because there's strong hustle culture and no shame in that game. And it could be that there's just different, that we all have different, just as with any kind of athlete, we have different levels of tolerance and ability in terms of the amount of rest, recharge, whatever we need in order to maintain that balance. Yeah. And so I'm aware that there are people that can go longer than I can and still show up at the same level. And that's okay. That might just be a difference. So I'm thoughtful about like, hey, my answer is not always a popular one, but I've kind of learned what works for me and allows me to show up and perform. And I know that it's also my job to manage that. I have to manage my own gas tank.
Yeah.
It's not somebody else's job. And I have to be aware of this, right? As we think about like where I fall in the Enneagram and all of that. Because as what Carol is describing, right? You want to help and help and help and help and help and help.
Yeah.
To the detriment of yourself.
That's right.
So I know it's like my job to manage my gas tank.
Yeah.
And to be monitoring
it's our job. And like guaranteed, sometimes we're not going to manage it well. And how do we know? Yeah. How do we know we didn't manage it well? Because we didn't manage it well.
Yeah. And what does that look like for you? Because like I think about the past, because I always say like, I'm a recovering workaholic. Haha. But I think about the past and we talked like in the podcast, it came up a lot about the physical process of all this. If you think about overwork. And I would get sick. Like I would go until my body was literally shutting down. So I'm curious how that shows up for you.
Yeah. So I went like 3 weeks in a row. Margot kept bringing things home. This was right before spring break. And I
always right before. Well, right, you got a trip coming up? Let's bring you everything. What do you need? Ding dong, headlights. We got it all. Elementary school. Yeah.
All the stuff. And so the first 2 rounds, I'm still swinging. The third round took me out. I had to get in the bed. It was like secondary infection, I think.
This was after it's only a flesh wound. And then you were like, no, I'm dying. I'm legit dying, guys. And I got to take to the bed.
Early morning stuff. And it made me just think about exactly what we were just saying. You don't know you've pushed too hard until you push too hard. And so being alert and awake to the signals. And then also for me, I'm paying attention to what is reasonable or what's needed. Because sometimes things in the situation that we're in, when it's like high, I feel as though it's high stakes, like it's the time we're scaling, we're pushing, and I'm willing to do more and faster right now than I want to do long term.
Right.
But what I'm noticing is it's hard to turn off the more and the faster because that's addictive. And
yes.
it's addictive, and it also, I'm realizing, helps me deal with my natural anxiety, which I've got optimism and a lot of energy, but I also have, so the energy comes from, and so I take the anxiety and I throw it into action, which is a strength and a gift, and also has the downside. And so if I'm conditioned now to work a certain number of hours a day for it to be hard, yet not show that it's hard, then how do I know when to stop? And so just letting myself go through, and that's where like the idea of like peeling the onion or pulling the thread, like I can learn something, but then I learn it at a deeper level through the next situation in a way I wouldn't have been ready to learn about it the first time. I think that's where I am right now about overwork a little bit, and about what, working with my sister is an amazing thing, and she sees things in me as patterns that other people might not see. And she's been bringing up, of course, and this is great, I think she thinks life is too easy. I think life is too hard. And so like, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle, maybe.
Yeah. But she brings up like, your head, like, where's your head right now? Because you're making this harder than it needs to be. And this sense of like, pull myself up by my bootstrap. She's like, bring your teeth. Like, it's okay. You can do this without all that strain. And I'm like,
gentle.
You're so
it's not worth it.
Right.
I'm a power lifter.
Yes. So I'm questioning that in a way that I wouldn't have before, but I also might be in a space where I've done a lot of heavy lifting that has gotten me now to where maybe I can ease up a little bit. And can I accept that? Like, is the heavy lifting is now a part of my identity? So, this is too, like, when I get out of the habit of things, like I'm a social person. I love to be with people, but when I'm focused on something, there's the kind of a retraction or a withdrawal. Yeah. And so what do I do for myself somatically in order to open myself back up to a more full life after a time of serious focus? And it's almost like it almost is like a loss, really interestingly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we were talking about working here, right? Like, we're not in a factory setting, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, working again. Like, a lot of times it's also, we like what we're doing. We enjoy what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think of it like I have a very blessed and full life where I want to be in a lot of spaces at the same time. And I have to be thoughtful and careful to make sure that I am in all the spaces that I need to be in.
Yeah.
So I think some of the benefit and the blessing of this season is that it's not like it's pulling you away, or you're having to pull yourself away, because it's not just I'm super focused on something that's boring and no fun. I'm also really enjoying it. Right. And so some of it is like, oh, I'm in a groove, and I want to keep going. So, I totally get that. It can be hard. And I think you asked a good question the other day around like, where is it turning into habit? We're going to have sprints and seasons of like, whoo, that was a week.
Yeah.
But what we know about our bodies is that we need to have recovery, right? Yes. So if we're going to sprint, then we need to take a break and walk and have a little bit of water.
That's right.
And where people go into overwork or burnout is usually when they're sprinting, and they don't get the recovery period, right? And then the body's just like, what's happening? I am stress, cortisol, adrenal fatigue, like what's happening here, right? Yeah. Like all those things are being activated. Yeah. Yeah. So being able to have that balance of going like, okay, am I just in the habit of doing this now? And could I, even though I really want to do more, is this a day where I could say, I'm going to take a break, or I'm going to be done for the day? I'm going to go do something with family or friends or whatever, versus I'm going to keep on keeping on because, the work is never done.
Yeah.
There's always more.
Right. That's right. And can it be that simple? I think what you just brought up is a great point, that we often think like, oh, I'm burned out, I need a sabbatical. When maybe it's, you need the afternoon off, or you need a 3-day weekend, or you need to just not answer any emails for a couple of days, whatever it is that we think it's got to be this major lifestyle overhaul. And sometimes it's dialing it back or just giving yourself a little bit of a break or going and getting a pedicure.
It could be. Yeah. I mean, and that's, to me, that's the self-care and the maintenance to go like, okay, I'm recognizing that I've taken it too far. If it is sustained and prolonged burnout, I would, from my experience, the pedicure's not enough. Yeah. Like, because it just becomes, it almost allows you to continue these habits. And that's when the body, like in my, like body shuts down. It's just like, nope.
Yep.
I was like almost sick at my wedding and like too sick because of, and again, this is before, that's why I say recovering old habits, right? But that was the chronic and the sustained. And I think back on some of those moments, and there was definitely a longer recovery period for some of those because it was chronic, it was sustained, and my nervous system was constantly on edge, and it was like on call 24/7. And I think I always felt like this. My body was like a tight, shoulders to the ears.
Yep.
And so in those situations,
absolutely,
for sure, I needed lunch. So just saying that to care for anybody who might be more in that's, you need I'm at a point now where I can just get a pedicure, right? Because I've done the healing and I'm knowing myself, and I'm trying to do more maintenance mode. And so it's in the moments or the seasons that I'm dialing it back. But a prolonged season possibly needs a little bit more, and that's okay.
I think that's a great perspective. And I think everybody listening is just wondering if we have terrible feet and why we keep talking about pedicures.
They're like, they must have like hobbit feet or something. I don't know. Pedicures. What are those little eye thingies? Facials. Yeah. What do people do? I don't even.
A walk in the park.
Cup of tea.
Yes, so many things.
I mean, it's all, to me, it's the little daily things that are so meaningful. Yeah, I've been doing you were doing this too, but I've been doing those little like lymphatic hops in the morning. I don't know if you're doing that again.
Oh, yeah.
I got a whole thing. I got a whole routine, like 10-minute routine I've been doing every morning.
Great.
I mean, Instagram tells me it's doing something for me. So we'll see. I don't know, but I'm enjoying
Instagram knows all. Okay. Final thought. One of the things Carol brought up was curiosity as a leadership practice. We talk about curiosity a lot. I wonder your thoughts on that.
I love how you're like final thought and then introduce a topic that we can talk about for an hour.
Yeah, no.
I mean, curiosity always. I mean, what is the basis of curiosity? It's taking a step back and saying, maybe I don't know what I think I know, and maybe I should ask some more questions. I feel like we should all be curious at all times in all areas of our lives. Is that final thought? I mean, I'm trying to think about how can I put a pin on it. But like, yes, curiosity.
That was the bow on it all. Be
with others and with myself.
In all things. Yeah.
Curious about my own emotions, triggers, motivations, and of those around me. Like, gateway to empathy is curiosity.
Yes, gateway to empathy is curiosity.
I just made that up just now, and I'm standing by it.
Statements to ourselves, like what I experience is, and this goes back to the self-critic. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why can't I stop doing that? And I'd really try now to say, isn't that interesting? That was, I wonder why I chose that reaction and if that really works for me.
Yeah. Ooh, what was going on there?
Yeah.
Just happened.
Interesting. Yeah. Little gentleness, little curiosity. I love it. All right, Karen, it's been so fun to break down Carol Klocek's episode. She brought so much richness to the conversation, and I think we're more careful about how we talk about trauma in the workplace, but the linkages and the relevance is completely there. We
can't wait for
the healed workplace.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this episode of The Breakdown of Inner Work. Thank you, Karen. And everybody will see you soon. Okay. Bye, y'all.
See ya.